So Jiva, that's brought us to the end of our tour of Objective-C and the foundation frameworks. We've looked at the syntax, we've looked at C effectively, we've then looked at the objective part of Objective-C and its syntax. We've looked at the foundation frameworks, we've looked at strings and collections and data, dates and calendars, numbers, and all the great support that we have there. And I think most people, after spending some time with it, because it is a little different, Objective-C, from other languages, and there are certain things you do have to get used to, the whole square bracket syntax and lots of that. But yeah, I think on the whole, after people have spent a little bit of time with it, they come to like this stuff. Now, a discussion that we've sort of left right till the end, because I'm guessing a lot of people are going to be watching this because they're looking to develop for the phone or the Mac desktop or the iPad. But actually Objective-C isn't as such an Apple, I did it again, Apple technology. It's actually wider than that.
Sure, absolutely. It's interesting. Objective-C kind of gets a bad rap when it comes to thinking about cross-platform development. In fact, I think a lot of developers come to Objective-C and almost feel a little bit like, why should I learn this? Because it's not going to be applicable other than developing for the Mac or the iPhone or the iPad. Now, to be sure, those are great platforms to develop on. And in fact, Objective-C's support on those platforms is unquestionably the best. I mean, it is the language to be developing on those platforms. And it's also, a really first-class language as well. But it is useful. It's good to know that that Objective-C does have some limited support on other platforms as well. And the things that you're learning through this course and through working with Objective-C isn't necessarily wasted if you don't develop for Mac OS X or iPhone or iPad. You can port some of that knowledge to working on Linux, on BSD, even Windows, through several third-party projects. Now, none of these are supported by Apple, and most of them are, I would say, works in progress. They're not necessarily complete, but they do a pretty decent job. One of them is actually the GNU-STEP project. Now, the GNU-STEP project actually strives to actually be a complete desktop replacement. So in fact, they actually provide not just an Objective-C environment, but also they provide Foundation, they provide Cocoa, I think they even have like some limited support for some core data classes and things like that. It's not complete, and on the different platforms, their desktop environment is very unique. It's specific to their particular environment. But for all of the things that we've been working on here that are really foundation level things, I would say that GNU-STEP has excellent support for Foundation, both on Linux, on BSD, and even on Windows. So you can actually develop using essentially virtually all of the tools that we've shown you in this course on any of those platforms, and expect that those libraries will be virtually identical to the Apple versions. It's really pretty cool.
I think we have to understand here, don't we, that we've been talking about Objective-C, the language with the syntax, and the foundation libraries, and as you called the language libraries that will be equivalent to the standard library on C.
Right.
So they really are about giving the core language implementations. And what we're saying is, through GNU-STEP, you can get that support almost anywhere.
Exactly. Now they've tried to, they've basically gone through and sort of copied all of the classes that Apple has been providing through Cocoa and their foundation. So the support is very, very good.
But now when you come to write applications like for the Mac OS X desktop, and you come to write applications for the phone and the iPad, then you begin to use lots of other frameworks written in an Objective-C, written in the same style and the same way we use them to, but things like Core Animation, and Core Data, Cocoa, and UIKit, depending on which platform you're going on. And that's where the support begins to fall down.
A bit, yeah. Now, I will say, as you know, a developer who's done a lot of iPhone work, a lot of times, you know, we want to develop like desktop applications, like companion applications that go along with our iPhone applications. And there is actually a tool, it's actually a really cool tool, that allows you to cross-compile GUI applications from Xcode to Windows. And that project is actually called Cocotron. I know it's a strange name, but it's really cool. What this actually is this is a set of compiler tools that you actually put into Xcode, and it allows you to take your existing Mac OS X application and change the SDK, just like you do when you're changing the SDK to compile for the iPhone, and actually generate a Windows executable that looks and feels just like a real Windows application on Windows. Now, again, their support is it's good. You know, they don't have all the classes, but they definitely do a very good job, and it's an interesting option to explore. In particular, like if you're an iPhone developer, you know, the iPhone is very much it's a cross-platform device. You know, I probably have as many Windows users as I do Mac users, and don't get me wrong, I love the Mac. If all I had to develop for was the Mac, I would be a very happy camper. But the fact is, a lot of my customers are Windows users, and so when I need to deploy a client application to go along a companion application for my iPhone application, I need to think about developing that for Windows as well. And there actually are iPhone developers who are using Cocotron today to develop cross-platform applications that they deploy both for Windows and for the Mac to interface with their iPhone applications.
Basically what it's going to mean is you need to be a little bit careful about what you're using, not necessarily using the most bleeding edge technology, because it's going to take time for these things to keep up.
Exactly. Usually these platforms are fairly behind in terms of like the newer technologies. Like I'm pretty sure neither of these actually support garbage collection at this time.
Okay, I guess it's also worth remembering that Objective-C is C.
It is.
So any platform that we want to run it on, we have access to any C libraries that are available for that platform.
Absolutely, you do. Now, there's some caveats with that. I mean, you have to jump through a few hoops sometimes to get to those libraries. Often, like if you're doing cross development on other platforms, they might have a standard compiler that they use for building most of their libraries, and both of these projects use GCC as the standard compiler on these other platforms. And so these libraries, if you want to interface with a library, it's going to have to work with GCC as well.
Okay, so that's interesting. That brings us to a point. So GCC is the Objective-C compiler, so that's also a C compiler, C++ compiler, is it?
It is a C++ compiler as well.
It's the compiler of compilers.
Yes, the GNU compiler collection, because there's lots of compilers as part of it.
Which is partly why it is available on lots of platforms, because this is being built in.
Exactly.
But my understanding is on OS X we actually have a choice of another compiler we wish to use as well.
Yeah, recently, and it's really cool, we now have the ability to use the LLVM compiler on Mac OS X and iPhone OS as well, or iOS, which gives us the ability to, in addition to just all around being a faster compiler, the LLVM compiler also gives you much better error messages than GCC, as well as some of these new features in the language that are coming about just recently. I would say that LLVM is very much the next generation of compiler technology that's going to be that is being used on Mac OS X and iOS. And of course, there's also the companion to that, the LLDB as well, which will be coming down the pike relatively soon.
Yeah, now LLVM again is an open source project, but Apple have embraced it. We can choose to use the LLVM compiler inside of Xcode.
Absolutely.
I say it's exciting because it's actually a step forward in compiler technology. It's doing it differently for the first time a long time. Let's be honest. That's great. So there is opportunity for cross-platform development here. We do have to say it's definitely a limited opportunity. How limited will depend on what you're trying to achieve. But if you're just trying to knock out lots of tools and utilities and command line things, whatever else, then and you want to learn Objective-C, then obviously this you could just learn this one skill set and keep using it.
Definitely.
That's great. So there we are. We've managed to spread Objective-C love to the entire world.
Well, we keep trying.
Okay.
Bye.